He does everything. College sports, pro sports, human interest, all of it. I mean, the guy never sleeps. John Canzano from johncanzano.com. Weekly appearance brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, homegrown in the Northwest. Follow John on all the social media channels at John Canzano BFT. Listen to the radio show, The Bald Face Truth, down there in Portland, Oregon. 7:50 the game from 3 to 6, and he joins us every single week. How are you? I missed you last week.
I'm doing well. I missed you too, buddy. I missed you too. Hey, can I just ask you a scary thing right now? One scary thing. Can we start there?
Yeah. What do you got?
All right. So I got a notification on my phone just a few minutes ago, and it said it recognizes that I'm home. Okay. I'm in my home studio. It recognized that. And it says, do you want me to put on auto focus so you can focus more when you're at home? I guess it would limit the notifications and all that stuff. But I'm just scared that my phone seems to know more about my life and my patterns than it should. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I need to ask it. What am I having for lunch?
Yeah.
You know?
Hey Siri, what thoughts on today? How is it going for you?
It terrified me.
Yeah, dude.
They're all terrified. How do you know I'm home?
Just all you kind of touched. It's funny that you brought that up because you touched it on your mailbag. And I can't remember what the question was, but it was something about AI and just
journalism.
Journalism. Yeah. Will journalism go away with AI? We've seen that where they're writing a lot of stories. ESPN, I think, flirted with it for a while. They may still be using it. They got criticized for it, and I think they went back to AP. But where AI was writing the game stories, and I think you're going to see more and more of that. But how much will it become a presence? I think in mass media, it's only going to grow.
Yeah, it has it in your broadcasts, right? We're getting more data than ever. We're getting velocity and exit velocity and spin rate, and they want to track the ball. They're able to track it, and see where did it miss the strike zone. So we're getting some positive benefits of technology all over sports. But one of the things that's happening in sports media is these newsrooms are shrinking, Puck. We know it. And radio stations and newspapers and TV stations are all, consolidating, and the staff is shrinking. And so in the end, they're using artificial intelligence to generate game summaries on a lot of these, websites for newspapers. And it will look at the box score and it'll tell you, who allowed 2 earned runs on 5 hits, and this person had 2 hits and stole a base. But what it misses is it misses the nuances of the game, and it misses the conversation you have with the manager, or this, or the context of the game itself. Like Oregon State on this big baseball run, back against the wall, this fact that they outscored their opposition 50-6 in 4 elimination games. Like, it doesn't quite grasp all of that. And so I don't think good sports writing will ever go away, because that there's a real thirst for it and a need for it. But it's kind of creeping in ways that, even the Masters broadcast, remember when they had the Masters clips and artificial intelligence voicing on the highlights?
Ludwig Åberg hits the ball down the center of the fairway.
Yeah.
He is 185 yards out. Well, for anybody that is a youth baseball parent, Game Changer, I don't know if you know this app. It's called Game Changer.
Yeah.
And it lets you track, you score the game, and it spits out in your video, and you're tracking the game for baseball and softball, and other sports use it too. But after the game is over, it writes up a summary of the game. And I'm telling you, you'll read it and you're like, well, that's a pretty good write-up. Yeah. And it pretty much detailed exactly what happened in the game. And then also when you follow it on the game stream, there's an audio version of it that plays in like crowd noise. And then it goes, here's the 2-2 pitch from John. It's a strike. Strike one. Count is 1-1. I mean, it sounds robotic, but eventually it won't. Someone will give their voice to it, and it'll sound better than ever before. So,
but what it misses is that, Nestor Perez, the coach of your kid's team, had your kid throw 77 pitches on 2 days rest. And there's a story to be written here about the abuse of that right arm and that elbow. And so, I think still, Puck, I have a friend who's big in that AI space. He owns a company. It's a startup. He came to me and he said, I could take all of your columns that you've ever written. I could put them into the system. we could put a game's box score in and it would spit back a column that was written in your voice. And I'm like, impossible, because I don't even know what I'm writing when I sit down to write sometimes. So there's no way that this thing could know. But I think we're going to get to a period one day where, true voice really will still matter.
I was thinking about it. What about television?
Yeah.
How would I know if that anchor is real?
Yeah.
And all they're doing, they're not offering insight. They're not offering an opinion. They're just telling you what happened today.
Yeah. I think you're going to get to the point where there's a lot of confusion. I mean, go to Instagram right now and figure out who's real and who's not on Instagram. So
I have no idea. All right. Yesterday, I'm going through Twitter, some social media platform. I think it was Twitter. And I love all of it because I believe all of it, and then I don't believe all of it. There was some Texas State rumor floating out yesterday. Oh, it's a done deal. They're coming to the Pac-12. You tell me, is Texas State a done deal? Are they getting close to Texas State of adding them as the 8th member?
Well, I think the Pac-12 knows what it wants to do. And I think anybody who's sitting back going, no, they're waiting for the settlement with the Mountain West Conference to decide it is naive. I think the Pac-12 knows who it wants ideally to add, but I think there are layers to it. Much in the same way where we were told there would be a bite of expansion. Remember, we talked about it, first expansion bite. It was the original 4 Mountain West schools. And then there was an additional bite that brought in Utah State, and there was an offer made to UNLV. I think this next expansion piece is going to come in layers as well, because they need an 8th school to get to 8, but they don't want to dilute what they have. And so, I've heard, Texas State is a great option, but it would be a fallback option, I think, in the eyes of a lot of people, just to get to that 8th member. Then could they go out beyond that and try to lure in a UNLV or a Memphis or a Tulane? There's really a limited number of suspects here, but the fact that there's a limited number of options, I think, has fueled a lot of the, shows that are out there that aren't sourced, that aren't talking to people, that are just kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall right now. And I've heard UNLV is going to the Big 12, and I've heard Texas State is done to the Pac-12. Like, both of those things could happen. It's worth speculating about. But I don't think anything is done. I think right now the Pac-12 it knows what it wants to do. I think the bite of expansion it ideally wants is UNLV. I think Texas State is a fallback option. But I still think there's some question as to how much money the Pac-12 is going to have to go after these schools, and how much do they want to dilute what they have already built? Because I think they feel like they have conference number 5 right now if they do nothing else but just add a member who's an empty suit.
Wouldn't and shouldn't Pac-12 fans be disappointed if Texas State is the 8th member?
I think it's underwhelming for me because it doesn't fit. Like, the two things that they started out talking were, hey, it's either best of the West or it's best of the rest. And going and getting a Sunbelt school that comes at a discount is neither one of those things. And that's where other people are more bullish on it and say, look, it makes sense from a financial standpoint, and the coaches want to get a toe into Texas to recruit. But man, you're getting a pinky toe in with Texas State. You're not getting one of your good toes in there. And so I think you ultimately, I know you like that. I know you ultimately.
What's the best toe? Is it the big toe? I mean, I would assume it's the big toe.
Either the big toe or maybe that one in the middle that's, that people look and go, oh, you're smart if that middle toe's long. I think people look at that one too and say, that's a good looking toe. But I think in the end, I'm not a foot guy. You're going to have to ask another guest on that.
Let's ask Rex Ryan. Let's get him.
You may blow up talking about that. It's not the listeners and viewers you want, but if you did a foot episode, you might really move the needle and go viral on that. But look, I think in the end, the Pac-12, it wants to either get UNLV or it wants the best of the rest, right? It wants to be that number 5 conference. So I do think, for me, Texas State, they've never had any success in football. They're not really in the West. It doesn't fit either one of those things.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah, there was something that came out yesterday, but maybe it was just a formality. I saw it, and then here's what caught my attention. I saw this tweet from Boise State, and then you do that emoji that you do all the time with the big eyes, like something's up. Yeah. So what was that? Boise State, they formally notified the Mountain West that their intent to extend or to leave, June 20th, 2026? Yeah. What's that? What's the significance of that?
Well, the Mountain West 5, as they're called within the Pac-12 offices, the Mountain West 5, had to give formal notice to the Mountain West Conference that they were leaving. So San Diego State, Boise State, Utah State, Colorado State, Fresno State needed to give written notice to the Mountain West Conference, plus pay a $5,000 deposit toward their exit fees, whatever they will end up negotiating. And they needed to do that before June 1st to avoid the escalation of potential exit fees. Now, presumably they'd be on the hook for as much as $18 million per school. That would jump up to 2 years worth of media rights, which would be like 36, 38 million, depending on how you scale that, if they did it after June 1st. So everybody expected this. This was not newsy. I didn't make a post about it because I didn't think this was a big newsworthy thing. If they hadn't given notice, maybe that's a post. Yeah. Maybe that's news. But
it got me with the eyes thing, though. Stop doing the eyes.
The eyes was like, hey, check this out. Like, sometimes you got to look at emojis and, hey, everybody, peep on this. Like Jeremiah Dickey, the Boise State athletic director, I reached out to him. I said, do we need to look into this? Is there anything I need to see here? He said, formality. We're just making sure that we're compliant with the bylaws of the Mountain West. Now, everybody else is reading into that does this mean UNLV is not coming and not coming in 2026? I wouldn't go that far. I was told by a source that is inside the conference, the New World Conference, that there's a possibility that UNLV could negotiate their way out of that and, maybe not giving notice early, because part of the settlement discussions pertain to the exit fees of the schools. Certainly UNLV could piggyback on that. I would be surprised if UNLV was not involved in these settlement discussions at all, because they have so much skin in the game, because they're supposed to get all this money from the Mountain West. I think that they would want eyes on what's happening. And if the money's not there, if Gloria Navarro, as the Mountain West commissioner, cannot land the plane on the money, she doesn't have UNLV and she doesn't have Air Force. And I don't care what the memo of understanding says. If you can't deliver the funds, you've got a problem with those schools and their flight risks.
Okay, last few nights I have found myself either sitting outside on the back deck or on the couch, and I've been tuned in to one of the 15,000 ESPN channels, and I've been watching the Oregon State Beavers baseball team, okay? And a couple of observations. One, where's the chainsaw? Do they not have the chainsaw at the baseball game?
Yeah.
Can we not get, like, after they strike someone out or hit a home run, get that thing going? So that's number one. Number two, are all these guys weightlifters as a side hustle? That's the biggest baseball team I've ever seen.
They are. They're power lifters. Yeah.
They're massive. And I don't know if they're just massive and then they wear like size small T-shirts.
They got their 8th grade shirts on.
They are huge. And then the third observation is, boy, does that look like a fun party in Corvallis. Yeah. I mean, they span that crowd, and I mean, everyone's in the black and orange, boozing away on a Sunday night. I think it was the game I was watching, the USC game, and they're just getting hammered. Like, God, that sounds fun.
Yeah,
I'm amazed by this, John.
Yeah,
how does the culture, school,
the DNA and the culture of that program is worth a study. It is. This is not the best baseball team that Oregon State has ever had from a talent standpoint.
Yeah.
But I think it's the most focused team that they've ever had. You watch them during the games, and it's the pressure they put on the opposition. And, they can hit home runs and mash. Obviously, they scored 50 runs in 4 elimination games.
It's their small ball game. I couldn't believe it.
They'll bunt. They bunted 4 times in an inning and scored runs. Like, the ball barely left the infield and they got there on the board. They can play, and they're very focused. Their coach, Mitch Canham, was a catcher on the 2006, 2007 teams that won national titles. Yeah. He is a mirror of Pat Casey, the old coach that led him to those championships. So you got Mitch Canham now coaching, very calm, very poised. Oh. I talked to him prior to the regional for about 20 minutes, and he was talking about everything but baseball. He was talking about how he took the team fishing and how they played golf. They went to a par 3 and played golf one day. And
great.
They spent a lot of time together, and it's not getting talked about on the broadcast right now because they played an independent schedule. Everybody knows what happened to Oregon State. They had only 20 home games this year because they went barnstorming. But Mitch Canham told me, he said, we were away from Corvallis so much and we were together so much that he feels like this team is tighter because of it. And you can tell in the games, these guys care about each other. They're up on the top step of the dugout. It's not about rally caps. It's about each other. Like, you can see that this team is really locked in. I'm going to say it, Puck. Like I said to Canham, like, do you want to get to Omaha? Of course you want to get to Omaha. And he says, I hate when people say, do you want to get to Omaha? He goes, if we're going to go to Omaha, we might as well win it. And, and I think this team, they got Florida State in the Super Regional, and I could tell you Florida State was watching the USC Oregon State games on Sunday night and Monday going, go Trojans. Like, they don't want to go to Corvallis and play that team in that environment.
I want people to tune into it.
Yeah.
I'm not unaware. It's in Corvallis, right?
Yeah. It's in Corvallis, right on campus. Yeah.
It's insane, this environment there. It's the fans, the players. You're right. They're all on the top step making noise. The game on Sunday, this USC pitcher can't throw a freaking strike.
Yeah.
And their crowd is on him. I mean, just on this game. Almost I felt bad for the USC pitcher.
They brought in extra bleachers for this game. They broke attendance records 3 games in a row. It's like they're just trying to can we get a few more people? They're drawing more than 4,300 people per game, and that place is rocking. And for people who know the campus, it's like a block from Gill Coliseum, right in the center of campus. The dorms are right outside it. So you've got students and you've got alumni and you got longtime Oregon State baseball fans who are there. But I think this team could win it all. I think they could go to Omaha and win it. They're that good.
Here's my question though. My original question was going to be how did it start? How did it happen? Yeah. How did they turn into this?
It was Pat Casey. I think it's the greatest success story in the state of Oregon's history. I mean, he is a local kid from Newburgh who grew up agricultural, strong values, and he's a salt of the earth guy. And he built a winning program at George Fox, and then Oregon State hired him, much the same as Scott Ruick. They took these small college guys and they handed him resources. And, it's interesting because I remember in 2007, I spent a lot of time with Pat Casey in Omaha, and he goes to church every day, in Omaha. So he walks down to this Mary Magdalene church that's in Omaha. So I said, can I come to church with you one day? As we're walking to church, we didn't talk about baseball. We talked about irrigation pipes. He told me when he was growing up, he said he wanted a bicycle. And he said his dad took him out in the middle of the field and pointed to the irrigation pipes and said, that's how you get a bicycle. You got to move all these pipes. That's who Pat Casey is. And I remember they were playing North Carolina in 2007 for the title, and North Carolina had all of these first-round draft picks. And I said to Casey, how do you beat a team like that? And he said, I don't need all the best players. I just need some of them. And they've got, again, the culture and the DNA. And so when all this chaos hit the Pac-12 and the football program at Washington State scattered in the wind, and the women's basketball team at Oregon State scattered in the wind, I found it very interesting that the baseball program didn't lose anybody. Those guys pulled together, and other teams nationally wanted to play them because they're a quad 1 opponent, and they were willing to go on the road. And, I think it's a great story.
What's interesting about it is the parallels I think that they have, now it's a different sport, is to Gonzaga basketball. Yeah. But this is a hell of a lot more of a successful story than Gonzaga basketball.
Yeah.
And we think as Gonzaga and I get it, college baseball is not as popular as college basketball, but we think as Gonzaga is one of the, it's not Mount Rushmore, but it's one of the top programs the last 20 years of college basketball. And this baseball team blows it away because they've won national titles.
Yeah. 3 times. I mean, 3-time national championship, and they're good enough to win this year. They've got the pitching, they've got the hitting. There's a unity there. Of course, baseball is a squirrely game. Like, you get in a 3-game series, who knows? But in 2006, they won 6 consecutive elimination games to win the national title. No team in history has done that, and I didn't think it was unusual. Mitch Canham, they needed to win 4 to get to the Super Regional. They won 4 in a row, and Canham's probably like, it's no big deal. He just, his comment after they lost the opening game of the regional was, hey, we didn't get a lot of home games. Our guys, maybe they decided they needed 5 instead of 3. There's just a calm to that and a poise to that.
Yeah.
that doesn't exist while the Florida coach is losing his marbles over the grounds crew at Central, Coastal Carolina. Like, it's just, there's no arrogance about it. It's a really easy story to root for.
Last thing and I'll move on. I want to get into Mike Leach here real quick. Most of the kids, Oregon guys.
There's some, there's a contingent of Oregon kids. He gets the best. They get the best kids from Oregon. But I find it interesting. They've got a kid named Trent Caraway who hit 5 home runs in 5 regional games. He's a Southern California kid who probably should have been recruited by USC and UCLA. But what they do is they get the best kids from the state of Oregon, and then they go out and because they become such a brand, there are kids not just within the United States but internationally who want to play for them, including Travis Bazzana, who was the number 1 overall pick in last year's draft. And then you go to Adley Rutschman, the prior number 1 overall pick. He's a local kid. And so they're getting kids from around the world who want to come play for them, who say, I want to go to Oregon State. And you're getting kids from Southern California. And the funny thing is, though, they're not taking everybody, Puck. They're not making the mistake that a lot of like basketball teams that get to the Final Four make, where they suddenly they got 5-star guys and they pick the wrong kids. They are still very selective in who they bring in and who fits the culture and who's willing to kind of do it the Oregon State way. And I find that they also tend to recruit kids who have been on championship teams. And so they try to find team captains and guys that have been on championship teams. So if you look at their roster, you're getting a lot of leadership there.
It's fun. If you're not into it, you haven't tuned into college baseball, tune into Oregon State. They are it's a fun team. It's a hell of an environment. Just tell them. And next time you talk to them, let's get that chainsaw. I want
chainsaw going.
I want somebody walking around.
Kind of not on brand for them, though. Like, they're just very low key.
I know, but just get that thing going. Switch over to Mike Leach. It seems like, college football made the right choice here, the Hall of Fame. It feels like this is the Mike Leach rule. They changed the threshold to get in terms of wins because he was falling just a percentage point from getting in. So they've righted a wrong here. It's too bad that he's not still with us to see it. But Mike Leach, we're talking about, I brought Mount Rushmore up earlier. I do believe you're talking about one of the Mount Rushmores of college football. His fingerprints are all over this sport, and just not college football. No. High school, pros, all of it, everything that he's contributed to the game.
Yeah, if you go to a 7-on-7 tournament, you're watching the principles of the air raid. I mean, it's, and he's got so many guys that were on his staff or maybe borrowed from him that are out there. And so his impact on the game alone, to me, makes him Hall of Fame worthy if you're talking about college football Hall of Fame. Historically, this organization that runs the College Football Hall of Fame has been a little bit stuffy with changing rules. So they had a minimum threshold of you have to have a 600 win percentage to be considered, and you have to have 10 years of coaching to be considered. Mike Leach comes in at 596, not 600. And so he literally was like 1 win away from being eligible. And so he doesn't make it. There's a lot of outcry. They now have lowered the threshold to 595. It's the Mike Leach rule. They're clearing the deck for him in 2027, which is when he would be eligible for induction. But I think too, there's an element here that people miss on. Texas Tech hadn't won really with any consistency before Mike Leach. Washington State had some years, but not like the sustained, consistent, hey, you have to account for Washington State. And Mississippi State the same way. He went to 3 programs that didn't have a lot of historical success. And so I think it's a little bit wrong for the Hall of Fame committee to say, hey, we need a 600 win percentage, because not all these jobs are the same, Puck. Like if you put, Mike Leach at Alabama, he's not going to have the same troubles he's going to have at Mississippi State. And I think it's an apples and oranges conversation at Washington State, at Texas and Texas Tech. He always ended up in that job where he was an outlier trying to punch above his weight. And he did with great consistency. And he had an 11-win season at Texas Tech. He had an 11-win season at Washington State. And, Washington State fans know what that meant and knew the impact of it. But I think nationally people were, not as tuned in to what Leach did. He did, he told me one time, He basically owned Oregon during the Mario Cristobal era. He's just a better coach, right? He was a better game coach. And I asked Leach about it one time, and he said, I beat them with my guys. Imagine what I could do with their guys. Like I always wondered what would happen if USC or Oregon or somebody gave Mike Leach a crack. I would have loved to see him at Tennessee or somewhere like that as well, but he deserves to be in that Hall of Fame.
Yeah. All right. Last thing for you. And I was watching this Saturday night. It was very kind of emotional. I know the show's not going away, but I do believe in a way it is going away. Inside the NBA, where does Inside the NBA rank for you when we start talking about the history of sports television?
I mean, it's got to be, look, if you really look at election time and you see sort of the panel discussion they have around the presidential race, it's born from sports. Like, they didn't do that before. There was like sports programming on Fox and ESPN and ABC, where they had panel shows at halftime and pregame shows. The political world has learned from sports in that way. And so I think Inside the NBA truly has taken it like to the next level. It's like on jet fuel with the personalities of Shaq and Charles and Kenny and Ernie. It had this own following that I think in a lot of ways magnified the NBA and emphasized what was going on in the NBA. I really do wonder about the negative impact of that show going away on the NBA, because even though the NBA got this massive TV deal, they lost this shot in the arm that is this show that was, for a lot of people, for a lot of peripheral fans, it was all they watched, like, of the NBA. And it was interesting. Now they're trying to, Shaq's out and he's talking about how they're trying to tinker with it. They're trying to do a show without doing a show, or can they do it without highlights because TNT no longer has the rights to the NBA highlights? I don't think it works. I think the best case scenario here is to just say, hey, it was great while it lasted. There's a season for all things. But I think it's just there's going to be a negative impact on the NBA, because I think there were a faction of people in the audience who were getting their NBA entertainment from that show.
Here's what I'm concerned about it. I mean, they've talked about how it's going to switch over to ESPN, that the ESPN will be like how they did it with Pat McAfee, right? They license it out. Here's my concern about that show going over and I guess being licensed by ESPN is how do you not get ESPN-ified? How do they leave it alone and let it be? And maybe that's in the contract, or maybe that's in the talks.
They won't.
But I just feel like they can't help themselves at that network. And I just feel that eventually will happen. And then they'll ask those guys to go on the other shows. And then that exclusive party to me is ruined.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me sad.
ESPN's the Death Star. I mean, that's what it is. And so I think anything that you put in there, there's a stormtrooper like feel to what's going on in there. And it's sad because, I think some of the great things that ESPN used to do, like Outside the Lines, and maybe a part of their College Game Day experience where you would have a great kind of vignette by one of their investigative reporters, it has been replaced by, hey, look at me, I've got a muscle tee on, let's arm wrestle and drive a Harley. Like, it's lost some of the substance of what made it. And that show, that Inside the NBA show, is all about the stuffing. It's the substance of that show. It's the personalities that are there. We started talking in this conversation about AI and how there's just more of the same, and people are shoveling the same crap over and over. If ESPN tries to leave its fingerprints on that show, it won't be the same. And that's why I just think it needs to be left alone and say, hey, look, it was great while it lasted, but I think the NBA may have misplayed its hand with saying, hey, we don't have a spot for TNT inside of this TV deal, because I wish that I think they're going to lose something with that show. It was a magnifying glass. There was a glow to that show that gave all corners of the NBA some sunshine.
Okay. All right. Do we have, what can you tease us with? What do we got cooking at johncanzano.com?
Well, I'll obviously be all over the Mountain West Pac-12 developments and what comes next in expansion, and it'll be sourced. It will be in depth. It'll be something you can get nowhere else. And then I'm taking a dive into Oregon State baseball. Obviously, that's such a great story how they cobbled together that schedule and are trying to make a run. And then obviously you like the human interest stuff, so I'll make you cry this week as well.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, Buck.
Yeah, that's fine. I like to cry. I mean, I like Val Votto. I like to cry and laugh every day.
The emotion is good.
It is. All right. Yeah. We'll see you next week. Thanks, bud.
Bye, buddy. Thanks.